Hello and welcome to this session on basic Salesforce development. I am Dilshan Pereira. I am employed as a Salesforce developer at CMS Private Limited in Colombo, Sri Lanka. So we are an IT BPO company mainly catering to customers in Europe. So before going into Salesforce development, most of you people must be wondering what Salesforce is. So to give a brief introduction to Salesforce, Salesforce is a cloud-based CRM system, customer relationship management, and initially it was serviced as a SaaS, which is a software as a service, but now it has evolved into a platform as a service. So basically that means that it's not only a customer relationship management platform. You can use it to basically provide any solution to a customer or to the public using the cloud. And as a company, it's a Fortune 500 company in the US. It's one of the largest tech companies in the world. And currently, it is estimated that Salesforce currently creates or has more than 1 million jobs involving Salesforce and the solution providers of Salesforce. So since this will be a relatively short session, I will not be spending too much time on an introduction to Salesforce and what we can do with it. And before diving into the development part of Salesforce, we will discuss some terms that I'll be using during this session. So first we have a Salesforce org. A Salesforce org is basically a shortened form for organization, which is your instance or account of Salesforce. So that's where you can use Salesforce, standard features of Salesforce, and that's where we can build on Salesforce to develop new features. Then objects. Objects is similar to a table in a normal database management system. So Salesforce has its own database, and each table in it is referred to as an object. And Apex is the programming language used in Salesforce. So this is a object-oriented programming language, very similar to Java. It's based on Java, so if you know Java, it's going to be very easy to learn Apex. And LWC is the latest UI development framework used by Salesforce to develop client-facing applications. Again, it's quite easy to learn, and it's based on HTML and JavaScript. It's based on the latest ECMAScript 6 JavaScript. So it's up to the modern web standards and it should be very easy to learn for normal web developers. And we will be discussing more about these terms once we get into the session and the demonstration. So let's dive right into it. Okay, so the first thing that I will be showing is how we can start developing on Salesforce if you are a developer who wants to learn Salesforce or basically wants to develop an application on Salesforce. And the easiest way to start this is by going to developer.salesforce.com. So this is the website where you can find all the information on development for Salesforce. This website is made for developers where we can learn new stuff on Salesforce or go through the documentation, the API documentation. All of this is available on this website. So if you want to start development as a new developer, what we can do is go to the sign up page here. And then here what we can do is create your own developer edition, which is your own org or organization as we discussed earlier. This will allow you to basically try out new stuff, learn Salesforce, and then implement what you learn in an org and see what you can do with Salesforce. So if you go ahead over here and enter your information, first name, last name, email address, your roles. So here you can enter developer and company name. So if you're just a student, you can give any name you want. It doesn't really matter. Select your country, postal code, provide a username. So the username has to be in the format of an email address. but it doesn't have to be an email address. So like this example, it can be name@yourcompany.com. It just has to be a unique username. And then when you click the sign me up button, it will create a new Salesforce organization for you, your own instance of Salesforce, and it will look like this. So this is the home page of a Salesforce organization, and I will not explain the navigation of Salesforce and how you can navigate to certain parts of it, because there are quite a lot of points to discuss if we get into that. So basically this is the home page of your Salesforce organization, and now we can maybe discuss objects which I specified earlier. So you can see over here on the top we have a navigation bar which has names like opportunities, leads, tasks, files, accounts, contacts, etc. So these are the out-of-the-box objects you get with Salesforce. So like I said, Salesforce has its own database or data model, and in that default data model, these are the tables that you find. So these default tables are mainly catered towards sales or CRM, customer relationship management. But if we want, we can create our own tables, or we call them objects. So we can create our own objects with its own fields and develop our own custom solution. So today mainly we will be looking at the account and contact object. So if I give a brief description of accounts and contacts, you can consider accounts as companies or an entity, and then contacts we can consider as people or individuals who belong to those accounts or individuals who belong to those companies. So to explain it more further, I will be using an example of an insurance company. So maybe many of you know this. If it's in Sri Lanka, if you are employed at a company, so this is mainly for the private sector. If you are working in a private company, that company will be providing health insurance to its employees. So normally the health insurance is provided by an insurance company. There are quite a few in Sri Lanka. So that insurance company will be providing health insurance to each and every employee of any private company in Sri Lanka, or most private companies. So if you take in the point of view of the insurance company, it will have many private companies in Sri Lanka which are its clients. So if we are talking in the terms of Salesforce, we can consider those clients as accounts. And then each company will have so many employees which we need to provide insurance to. So those employees can be considered as contacts. So if you go into the accounts tab here, we call these tabs. If you click accounts, we can see that there are some list of accounts. So this is the basic Salesforce data you get with your developer org. So you can consider these as the company names. And if we go into this company, so this is the record page for that account. And you can see the name of the account is Edge Communications. And we have some other fields like type, phone number, website, account owner. And this is the default user interface that we get in Salesforce. So all of this, what you see, is out of the box. So if you go to details, this is basically all the fields that belong to this object. So you get some further fields like fax, some new fields like employees, SIC code, annual revenue, address. These are all out of the box in Salesforce, so just don't worry about them for now. And if we scroll up and go to the related section, we can see that there are two contacts for this account. So in our insurance company example, we can consider these two as employees of the company Edge Communications. And if we click on one contact name, again we see a similar page to the account where the contact has its own fields such as phone number, email, and again the own address, date of birth, and you can see the name here is, you can see it as the first name and last name. So this is basically the default user interface of Salesforce and how we view data in Salesforce. So talking about the development, today we'll be focusing on a small development just to give you a glimpse of how easy it is to work in Salesforce and how easy it is to develop something for a customer. Okay, so what we will be trying to do today is we have come back to the account page here. Edge Communications is the account we are focusing on. And basically what I want to do is I want to see where are the contacts or where are the people, employees of this company, where they live. So we have that information in Salesforce. We have the address of the employees, of the contacts. So over here, the mailing address. So we will be using that field. And what I want to do is when someone who is using our system logs into Salesforce and goes to this account page, I want to basically give a visual representation of where the contacts belonging to this account live or are situated in. So that means I want to show a map, a Google map you could say, of where the contacts are from. And the final goal will be that in this page, for the account page, in this section where you can see activity and chatter, just above this section I want to create a map which shows the locations of all the contacts belonging to this account. Okay, so let's now switch to the development side. So basically if you want to develop in Salesforce, the easiest way would be to click this option over here, and we can see an option developer console. So if you click developer console, it will open something that looks like an IDE or a text editor. Yeah, so this is the Salesforce developer console, and we can use it to create new classes or new pages, any new components for Salesforce. And we can do this all in the browser. We don't need to install anything on your computer. It's all on the browser. So here you can see you can create classes, pages, components. These are all options we have as developers in Salesforce. But today we'll not be using the developer console for our development because it's not the recommended way of developing for Salesforce. So what Salesforce recommends for developers is to use Visual Studio Code. So let me just switch to Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is a free and open source text editor, but with some extensions provided by Salesforce, we can use it to develop for Salesforce. We only need to so basically you need to download and install Visual Studio Code, and then over here we can see that there is an extension called Salesforce Extension Pack. And once you install this, we can start developing for Salesforce on VS Code. Okay, so I have already set up my Visual Studio Code to work with the developer edition that I'm using. But that's basically a few, it'll take you a few minutes to set up this process. And basically all you need to do is just log into your developer edition using Visual Studio Code. So once you do that, over here you can see our folder structure. So we will be focusing on classes and LWC today. So classes is basically, like I told you we are using an object-oriented programming language called Apex. So the classes over here is very similar to your Java classes. So over here you can see I've already created a class called Contact Location Controller. So this is what we will be using for our task of creating a map with the location of the contacts. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the code. And as you can see, this is a class called Contact Location Controller. and I have a static method called getContacts, which is so this is very similar to Java, the basic syntax you can see over here. So this getContacts method is accepting a string parameter called account ID. And then over here in the first line of the method, we can see this is basically a query, and it's using its own Salesforce query language called SOQL. It's again similar to SQL, but I would say it's even easier than SQL. So what we are doing in this query is, I'll just explain what the query does. We are retrieving all the contacts from the contact table which have an account, and also where we have defined an address. So where the address is not null. This is what this query is doing. So I'll not go deep into each and every field. And then this part of the code will basically get the contacts from the database, and we are creating a wrapper class to show the information in our user interface. Again, will not be explaining deep into what wrapper classes are and all of that, but just want to show you that it's very similar to Java. We have a query here, and then we are creating a new list, and then we are using a for each loop to add the data into a list. And over here we have the wrapper classes, which are also known as inner classes. And now let's switch to the LWC. So I have created a Lightning Web component named as Contact Location Viewer, and this web component, as you can see, it has its HTML file and JS file. So again, it's very similar to a web page, a normal web framework. So the HTML file is the front end or the UI, what the user gets to see. So you can see it's using HTML templating. If you are familiar with it, it's a common practice framework, and we are using some out-of-the-box components available with Salesforce. So this component is called the Lightning Card, and then within that we are using the Lightning Map component. So if you go deeper into Salesforce, you will learn what these components are, and that there are a large number of out-of-the-box components that developers can use instead of writing their own custom code for normal common applications. So for this common application of creating a map, Salesforce has its own out-of-the-box component called Lightning Map. And if we go to the JavaScript file, again we are using standard JavaScript practices here, modern JavaScript. We are importing some libraries. Again, these are Salesforce libraries which we need to import to make it work properly. And then over here we are importing getContacts from Apex Contact Location Controller, which is the class that we discussed a few minutes ago. So we are importing the getContacts method from the class, and then over here we are using some decorators, again JavaScript decorators, and we are using the wire decorator, which is another Salesforce provided decorator, which is used to connect the JavaScript to the Apex class. So again, I will not explain what this does. So basically what happens over here is when the page loads, this function wired contacts is called, and if we receive data from it, if there are no errors, we will assign the data returned from the Apex method, our controller class, to basically a variable known as contacts. And then if you switch to our HTML page, this lightning map, we are passing the contacts list as map markers, and then the rest of it is basically handled on its own. We don't need to worry about how it's handled, the user interface. The map will be rendered, and we should be able to see the locations. And another thing I should mention is if we go to the JavaScript file over here, When we are calling the get contacts method, we are passing the account ID as a parameter. So basically, when we add this component to the account page, we will get the ID, the account ID, which is you can call it the primary key of the account object, and passing it to this function, where then we will run the query to get all the related contacts to that specific account. Okay, so now we will see how we can deploy this code or this development to our developer org. So if you have set up the extensions and set up the connection to your org properly, it's basically a matter of just right clicking and selecting this option, deploy this source to org. So we don't have to use any terminal or any commands for this. It's just using clicks we can deploy this, but if you want, we can also use the Salesforce command line for this. Okay, so since I had already deployed this to our Salesforce org, I will not wait for this to complete. I will switch back to my org, the browser. And now if you are wondering how we can add this component we created, or if you want to see what it looks like in the UI, the easiest thing we can do is we are now on the account page, and if you go to the options over here, there's an option as edit page. So once you click the edit page, we are taken to what is known as the app builder in Salesforce. This is basically a drag and drop editor. Basically, it's using the concept what you see is what you get. So you can see over here we are seeing a preview of the exact account that we were just viewing, and over here we have a tab known as components. So all these components over here we can simply drag and drop into our account page. So these are the standard components that you get out of the box. You get certain visualizations, record detail, record list. We can create charts, rich text, Twitter integrations, and we have so many options out of the box. So we will be using our custom components. So as you can see, this is the component that we just created, the LWC Lightning Web component. So yeah, we can simply drag and drop. And as soon as you do that, you will be able to see that it's doing what we intended it to do. We can see a preview, and we can see it's showing a Google map. So let me just go ahead and save this page. The changes we made, and if I click back, yeah, if I go back to the account page, now you can see that we have a new component, we can call it over here, known as contact locations, which is above the activity and chatter component, and it's a Google map which is showing the locations of the two contacts that belong to this account. So that's basically all there is to it, to Salesforce. As you can see, it's quite easy to develop on Salesforce, but this was a very simple use case. And if you want to go into very complex developments, that's also possible. You have your own programming language and web development framework, so we can develop whatever we want for Salesforce. We can integrate it with any other system using web services, be it REST or SOAP. All of that is possible. And also I will show you another part of Salesforce. So this what we can see here is the front end, or what our customers will also use, where we can see the tabs and all of that. But if we click over here and go to setup, that is where we can do a lot of the configuration in Salesforce. So Salesforce is not only development. Coding is not the only way to customize Salesforce. There are so many other ways. So if we go to the object manager, here we can see all the objects or tables that are already included in Salesforce. So these are included out of the box in the standard object model. But if we want, we can create our own object and add our own fields to it with their own names. And we can also add stuff like validation rules. And there are certain out of the box, or you could say, point and click tools available in Salesforce. So we can automate certain activities in Salesforce using point and click. We don't need to use code for that. So all these options over here are how we can customize your Salesforce org to meet the requirement of the customers. So as you can see, it's really powerful and we have a lot of options. So basically that was how we can develop for Salesforce, a very brief glimpse of what we can do and how easy it is to develop using a knowledge you already have of web development frameworks and object-oriented programming. And if you want to learn more about Salesforce, I would say the easiest or best place to go would be Trailhead, Salesforce Trailhead. So just type in trailhead.com in your web browser and you will be taken to this website. And I would say that this is one of the best resources that you could find to learn something online. So this is the main reason that Salesforce is so easy to learn for people. So this website Trailhead is completely free for anyone who wants to learn. You can just go ahead and create your new account. So I have already created my account. And this is basically a gamified learning environment where we can earn our own badges, and we have what you call trails and trail mixers. So it's quite fun to learn, and you get your own hands-on projects. So I would say that if any of you guys are interested in learning Salesforce further, just go to trailhead.com, create your own account, and start learning. And also, once you are basically learning Salesforce and you have some experience with Salesforce, Salesforce also has its own certification program. Salesforce also has its own certification program, which is similar to maybe you're familiar with Oracle or Azure or Microsoft certifications. It's similar to that. So Salesforce certifications have a very high value in the market right now because Salesforce is growing very fast, and even in Sri Lanka it's growing quite fast. There are quite a few companies with Salesforce developers and projects. So I think that it's a very good growth area in Sri Lanka. So basically that has been it, and what I wanted to show with this session is a very brief introduction into Salesforce and how easy it is to develop for Salesforce, and also show you how you can learn Salesforce if you are interested in it. So basically that's it, and I'll be wrapping up now. So thank you.